Fritz, Talisman, what's your favorite character? What do you play? What do you think about playing on there? That's what we're going to look at in this podcast, this vlog, making our way through the Magical Quest game. And I think a lot depends on how you play the game, rules as written, or some sort of house rules. Rules as written, draw the character, and that's what you get. That's where you are. Sometimes you get a character you like, sometimes you get a character that you're a little bit indifferent about, and other times just how fast can I run into the dungeon and get killed so I can draw again. Generally, with the group, we play with all the expansions. All the characters are in play, and we're a pretty competitive group. So with that, we have some house rules in that you draw 3 characters. You keep them hidden from the other players. You have about a minute to strategize and think about, from your hand of 3 characters, what do you feel like playing? While you're doing that, you're also looking, it's like liar's poker, you're also looking at everybody else to try and get an idea based on facial expressions and output what they might have drawn. Then 1, 2, 3, reveal. You throw down your character card. That is what you are playing. Since we have all the expansions in play and all these characters, it's a good way to not only make sure that they regularly get rotated and seen, but you have a little bit of control over what you want to play based on play style or what you feel like in the moment. That said, if you die, then you randomly draw 1 character on there. So we kind of incorporate both. If I am playing super competitive, a lot depends on the group. If it's with the regular guys and we're really, really ruthless, I mean, it's scary, then I prefer a magic class on there. I want someone that has access to spells, preferably the wizard, could be the sage, could be the warlock on there, could be the philosopher. With less life and less strength, I'm not really as worried about that because we play with all the expansions and I will run into the highlands. That's usually my arcane casting strategy. Not that there aren't some really tough encounters in there, but for the most part, in the highlands, the encounters are manageable, and there's a good grouping of items and treasures, rubies, emeralds, things like that I'm going to take and cash into the city and use to jack up my character on there versus, say, running into the dungeon or going to some of the other expansions. So with that in play, my liability for less strength, it's there, but again, controlling the random, it's manageable. If we're playing for fun, then I prefer characters like the Highlander or the Minotaur, where I can stack on a D6 based on the ability. I can charge, I can rampage. That's interesting because it's going to give you a +1 or +6 on the physical attacks, on the strength-based attacks, and it can never be taken away because it's a natural ability. It can't be nullified. It's not an object. It's not a follower. It's not a trade-in for the trophies, and you go higher, then you go lower. So that's a boost that at key points is essentially going to make me immortal. So if I'm going for the Eagle King or I'm going for the Black Knight, I go in there, maybe I've got an object or 2 to boost up my strength plus my base strength. Maybe I've traded in 1 trophy or 2 at that point. Preferably I have a potion in my pocket to boost strength, the potion of strength or dragon's teeth, things like that. So I'm going in D6 +1 plus another D6 and then my charge or rampage ability. That gives a really nice punch for those times that I need it on there. Then there's a class of characters that if I feel like, if I feel like having some real lulls and some real fun, so halfway between competitive or non-competitive, if I'm playing with a very, very strong group where I don't want to directly challenge them, then I really like to play something like the Spy. Doesn't really stand out in strength, doesn't really stand out in craft, but the ability to shadow is huge because in a very competitive game, you will have people actively trying to nail you if you've got a good item, or if they have a good item and they get totified, the ability to shadow prevents a lot of that. It also prevents some pretty rapid movement abilities on there, so you can at least get into the vicinity. You know, if I'm on one side of the board and someone draws Pool of Life, or they draw something, the Treasure Trove or the Treasure Mountain, whatever it is, where you stack coins on a card, or you stack Craft or Life or Strength, everybody's going to be descending on that. It's going to take me a turn or two of a D6 movement to get over on that side of the table, unless I've got a teleportation spell or some other type of movement augmentation. But the spy has the ability to shadow. If someone's even remotely in that area, it gets me within range, and then within the range of a D6. Not that I would then burn a fate if I don't nail it, but there's a lot of interesting movement in there. There's also a bunch of characters. Is it the Magus? I mean, there's so many. There's a bunch of characters, the Gladiator, I believe, where as you, maybe the Ogre Chieftain too, as you acquire followers, you can use them to boost combat. You can use them as meat shields. Essentially, you get your little roving band of pirates, whatever, to fight. I find those really interesting and possibly a little bit overpowering, because based on the expansions, if you're all in, and based on going into the city where there's a good amount of followers, you can quickly rack up a little bit of army in there. And if you get a little bit of coin, then you start going the potions and pets. So you start getting the whole pets. And it's literally like unstoppable with what you can augment your dice, what you can sacrifice, what you can do. The advantage here is, or I should say not advantage, the strategy here is that it's this game of attrition. You're going to lose stuff in the game. And that's what's kind of frustrating for some people that see their character development where they own it. You own nothing in the game. It's a question of how long can you hold on to it, and at some point you're going to lose it, either because it's going to get stolen, someone's going to steal it from you, or hit you and steal it in combat. It's going to get destroyed. It's going to get discarded. Something is going to happen. It's kind of one of the ways that it keeps an internal mechanic of the game not getting, not that it always works, but not that the game gets so far ahead that you can never catch up. You're always losing items other people are. Followers are the least lost. There's aspects in the game you could fall, lose a follower, ice bridge, things like that. But for the most part, it's aimed at stripping you of spells and stripping you of objects. So if you develop your little army, that has the duality, that has the staying power of not getting lost as much. Those are the characters that I like to play. Thief, you know what? I throw the Thief in there too, running around for the lulls along with the Spy. Just the ability to steal and steal things like that in a big game is potentially big if you want to go some way rather than fully confronting someone. Alchemist, someone had Alchemist in the comments. Alchemist, and I believe, is it the Leprechaun? Characters that have the ability to conjure gold or transmute are massively powerful. Is it the Elementalist? The guy who can transfer strength or craft based on the start of the turn, what he wants to do. That's really big also, because that gives you a huge bump in both areas. So if you get a slight lead in craft or strength, you can then develop that out. So there are some other really potent characters in the game. And then there's some where it's like, I drew the troll. I know I've been hating on the troll a lot. You know what it is? When I play, in the previous podcast, I have two versions of Talisman. I have the Black Library version with the cardboard stand-ups that if we're playing just base game, or if I bring it to the gaming club and it's like, hey, let's play this game, and we've only got like an hour and a half, I just do base. I just do core, 0 expansions on there. And in that version, the troll is just awful. The dwarf is awful. The elf is bland on there. It's like, okay, really? They did boost the troll a little bit on there, so a little bit of hate that I give here and there of certain characters is not always completely warranted from that perspective on there. So your characters, I'd be interested to know Possessed. Possessed is another one that I like for the lulls because kind of interesting stuff happens. The Dark Cultist, I like her in theory because every time you gain a trophy, you roll on the dark table on there and you get like the gifts from the Chaos Gods. A lot depends on the expansions again that you're playing. With someone like her, and I think is it the Spider Queen? There's ones where when you gain a trophy or you win an encounter, you possibly gain a power, or you gain some sort of, you roll on the table and see what happens. The challenge here again with the expansions, you're diluting that adventure deck with objects, with followers, with events. There's actually less fights than you think on there. So there's less chance that you're going to roll on that table on there. But in theory, I like her, and she can, the random nature really kind of level up fast, especially if you're willing to burn a little bit of fate to kind of get what you want. Your characters, your choices, and the house rule that you play or don't play with. Do you draw one character? Do you all pick? Do you pick 3 or pick 4? How do you deal with character management, especially if you've got some of the X-Packs in play?